welcome. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and today I have the distinct pleasure as we journey around Williamson County to talk to some of the early Williamson County folks, to actually let you enjoy Connie Clark, the original Connie Clark. She works here in our complex on a part-time basis, helping people. And Ms. Clark, Connie, thank you very, very much for being with us today to share about a little of the early days of Williamson County.
Well, I'm honored to be here, of course. And when you asked me to do this, I thought, well, I may have a few things to say what happened to me early on that you all would really not even believe, but I have some pictures to prove it.
Well, one of the things we wanted to do today, and you do have some photos, I think the folks that are watching the show will enjoy hearing about topics of your early days, because you were born and raised here. You were a Ewing. You've lived in the Franklin area your entire life. But some of the most fascinating things was talking about Willow Springs, but to me was to know and hear you say a few years ago that you actually ice skated on the Harpeth River when it froze over. Not real sure the exact time, but probably in the 30s or 40s, and have a little discussion about that. But let's go back in time. Talk to us a little bit about your mom and dad and where you were raised, and your brothers and sisters, and then of course your immediate family. I think most everybody in the Middle Tennessee area understands you love all your children, but you've got one's probably a little bit more famous than the rest of them.
More than likely.
Tell us about those early days. You're born to a family of how many? Your mom and dad? And
my father had 4 brothers and a sister. My mother was born in Lawrenceburg.
Now, what was her maiden name?
Parks. She was a Parks. And she had another sister and 2 brothers. But when I came along, I happened to be the only child. And I was born in 1930, and I hadn't really thought about this till right now, but you might be interested in the day I was born. Of course, back then, you were born at home, and the doctor came to your house. And it happened to be on a Saturday, and the Vanderbilt football game was on the radio. And of course, back then, that's all we knew in Franklin was Vanderbilt. And so when just about the time I understand that I was supposed to come, Dr. Dan German, who everybody might remember, and my daddy were listening to the ball game. And so the nurse hollered and said, "Come on, Dr. Dan, come on." And he said, "Wait a minute, Vanderbilt's back to score. You'll have to wait till..." So as you can tell, I must have been born right in the middle, because I've always been a big football fan.
Well, and you know, some people watching this show may not realize where Dan German Hospital is not really a hospital, right, in the sense we think of today. It was more like a doctor's office there.
Right. It was a doctor's office for a great many years, and then when they felt like they needed some hospital, they did add on to that. And now, as you well know, they have taken all that off, and it's still a house. They wanted to leave that just so people could see where the first hospital, you might say, was.
Well, in those younger years, and I know there's a wealth of knowledge up there in your head, but it was difficult times, moderate times. It seems like, from what I read and heard, winters and conditions were a lot different than they are today.
Oh, they were. Of course, when I was born, actually, it was in the Depression years. I was very fortunate, I guess, that I was an only child, because my family, we weren't rich or anything like that. Nobody in Franklin was rich. We were just plain people, and we made enough Daddy made enough for us to live on, but it wasn't anything, terribly
And
great.
where did you go to school in those early years?
To that old elementary school that sits right there at 5 Points. And then I went to Franklin High School when it was the old school up on the hill up there on Columbia Avenue.
Well, back in those days, as I pick your brains, as we go through a little bit of your history of time, what could we expect in terms of number of children in the classroom? Or was it one school, one through so many grades?
Yeah, it had to be. The old elementary school was first grade through 8th grade. And back then, they didn't have pre-first. You went to kindergarten probably, or a little church kindergarten, and then we started into first grade. And there were 2 grades to every, 2 classes to every grade.
Of course,
And,
no buses.
Oh, Lord, no. And most of the time we walked to school. Of course, we were just, it was right downtown on Main Street, and we were just 3 or 4 blocks from town. And everybody was the same. Everybody had, rarely ever anybody even had but one car. And I guess I was fortunate because my daddy worked downtown, so I got to ride to school on the way to his work, but I walked home a good deal of the time.
And the school's heated by no air conditioning.
Oh, gosh,
We didn't
no.
even know what air conditioning was at that time.
We sure didn't. And I was complaining one day to my children about how we didn't have air conditioning and we just did fine in school. And Connie, who always contradicts me about everything, says, well, Mama, you realize now that everybody has air conditioning. Back then, nobody had air conditioning, so they didn't even think that it was warm or cold or whatever.
And I would, I often am reminded, my mother is still living, as you know, and she is older than you, but she's told the stories in those early days for young girls to be going to school. You would think that more girls stayed at home, didn't go to school, but that's not necessarily the case a lot of times. The girls were expected to go and learn to do things in schools just like the boys were.
Sure. The one thing that the children now will find very different is that when I was in school down there, we had a playground on either side of the school. The girls played on one side and the boys played on the other, and they were not allowed to go into each other's playgrounds. And the kids now, who are all together everywhere, think that's kind of strange, but back then we just weren't allowed to play like that.
Somewhere around your early life, 10, 11 years of age, one of the reasons that I wanted to touch on that, and you've got some pictures here, we're going to try to show those up on the screen, but talk to us a little bit about the Harpeth River and that very, very cold winter we had.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I don't know if it was 1940 or 1941. I'm sure there is a record somewhere. But at that time, the Harpeth River froze over, and so did the Cumberland River. And I have seen pictures that people have taken in Nashville that people were fishing through the ice. But when the Harpeth River froze over, of course, we had not ever had anything like that happen in Franklin. And for some reason or other, I wanted to see if I could get on. Well, we could all walk down there and walk on the river, but my daddy got me a pair of ice skates. And so I have a picture of me ice skating on the Harpeth River right under the Murfreesboro Bridge.
And I think people need to understand where I'm looking, and Newt, and then we're going to try to get it on the show. Here you are bundled up with your arms and kind of silhouetted out.
Yeah, yeah.
Looked like certainly a Peggy Fleming. Some of the folks might remember her. But in the background is a picture of an individual, probably friend.
That's my cousin, Jack Pinkerton.
And
he was under the bridge, and I was a little bit out from the bridge. But now you have to understand, this was the old bridge, nothing like the bridge we have now. This one is the one that fell in when the chicken truck.
Well, now you got to explain about the chicken truck going across the bridge.
Well, and I can't remember what year that was, but the historians can tell you that. But when the chicken truck, of course, the bridge was old.
Wooden structure, I suspect.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And when the chicken truck ran across it, the bridge caved in, and so did the chicken truck, and the chickens were scattered all over Murfreesboro Road out there around the bridge. And it was quite a sight.
Well, and when the bridge, I mean, there wasn't a lot of other alternative routes to get up and down that road.
No.
And on the other side, if you left Franklin on Highway 96 or Murfreesboro Road,
Yeah.
we refer to it, you cross over the river there.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of other ways to get around.
No, there was not.
And of course, on that side was nothing but fields at that time, I suspect.
Oh, sure, yeah. It was pretty much open, everything.
So you survived that. You had an opportunity to ice skate and play on the frozen Harpeth River, realizing the Cumberland River too. So we go a little longer in history. You're in Franklin High School. There wasn't. Franklin High School was not where it is today. We need to remind people Franklin High School was still at 5 Points up the street on Columbia Avenue.
And to me, it was one of the prettiest old buildings. And I'm so glad that there are pictures left of it, because it's just hard. I really don't feel like I've had much education, because the grammar school burned and the high school burned, so I can't prove that I've ever been to school.
Well, in those days, it wasn't uncommon. Of course, the buildings, because of the severe weather in the wintertime, they were heated with wood and coal, depending on what area you were raised in. And oftentimes those old floors, there were hardwood floors, and they cleaned them with coal oil, and they were just like a brittle
they were
matchbook.
Yeah.
And when the fire got started, it was pretty well over. So finished up high school. Take us down the rest of your journey as you sooner or later you met a man.
Oh, I did. And of course we had 3 children, and was a wonderful marriage, and we were married nearly 50 years when he died, and he's been gone about 15 years. But I have 3 wonderful children, as you've said. Connie, of course, my oldest, is I'm very proud to say she's a Tennessee Supreme Court Justice. But I'm just as proud of my other children. They have done what they wanted to in life. My daughter Kathy has 3 marvelous sons, and my son Bill has 2 marvelous sons. So, and then I have a lot of great-grandchildren.
And you lived pretty much not too far from where you were raised.
Let me go back and tell you a little bit about
Please.
Where Omo School is. Was where my great-grandparents lived. And most of the land around there belonged to the Winstons. When my grandmother, who was a daughter of theirs, married, she built a house on the corner on 4th Avenue. That house is no longer there. It's been torn down for years, and there's an apartment complex down there now. But on up the street, my father built our house, and my uncle built a house up there. And then the rest of it was just lot, just big old open space. And when my aunt lived there, they had a cow and pigs and chickens and all sorts of stuff out there. And so, and now, of course, it's all built up. And I live in one of the condos, which was where the barn used to be. And most of my life I've lived right around that area.
How about downtown Franklin? Different than what it is today?
Oh, heavens. In the first place, I don't think we had 500 people in the town of Franklin. And, the pace was so slow, and everybody walked. And, of course, all we knew was going to the movies, because that's all there was, entertainment. And my children get tickled at me when I said we used to go to the picture show. But that's what we called it back then. We didn't call it the Franklin Theater. It was just a picture show.
But it's the same place.
It's the same place. Same place.
And downtown life was much different. A lot of trade went on down there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was our county was predominantly agricultural.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the rural areas. I'm sure you didn't make too many trips to Flat Creek and some of those surrounding areas, but that was a long ways off.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, when you got out of Franklin, that was all the country to us. People who think they live right in downtown Franklin now, that was out in the country to us.
And going to Nashville, did you ever make trips to Nashville?
Oh, yeah. But it was, that was a big deal to go to Nashville. Although we did go to Nashville for shopping for the big things and the more, I don't know how to put it. But we didn't have a lot of real big department stores and things like that in Franklin. Most of it was just small stores and grocery stores.
Well, and people forget, in those early days in Franklin, life was it was a very tough life. You didn't know any different because oftentimes the children you played with, all of you had
the same.
You had the same or didn't have the same.
That's right.
But to get to Nashville, for an example, they had an interlocal bus line.
We did, and we went to Nashville on the bus line a great deal of the time.
Can you remember what something like that would cost to get on?
Oh heavens, probably 15 cents
to ride up to Nashville.
To go to Nashville, maybe 20 or 25.
In those days, crime a problem?
Not really. Not too much. Certainly not in our area. If you've read Fleming Williams' book from the 70s to the 90s, he was sheriff, but even in that era, which is a good many years after when I lived there, really we didn't have terrible crimes, horrible things.
And I know you're very active in your church, much throughout your life. Most people fail to realize the beautiful downtown churches we have, particularly around the Five Points area. Those have been a staple of our community for many, many years.
Oh, they have, yes.
Born and raised, your family went to church there, and more likely you wound up going to church there.
Oh yeah, sure.
You had an era, a period there that probably people just didn't realize, certainly didn't realize that Franklin would be like it is today in 2013. But life was a lot slower, but it was a lot more simpler. I know that you talked to me about a place called Willow Springs.
Willow Plunge.
Willow Plunge. I said Willow Springs.
Oh, yeah.
I was raised around on a place called Willow Springs. But Willow Plunge, tell us a little bit about where that's at and what was that place?
It's out. I wish there was still something left out there that you could see. There are pictures of Willow Plunge the way it was. I don't happen to have any. But that's where we went every summer. We spent the whole day out there, and I have no idea. I think it probably cost us $25 to get in.
And what was it? A swimming hole?
It was two great, huge, immense pools. And Mr. Kennard that built the pools just built it, dug a hole in the ground, and they were, like I say, they were huge. The bigger side had two big diving boards on it, and the other side, it was kind of strange the way I have to explain it to you. It was fed by springs, and the springs would feed into the lower pool, we called it, and it was always ice cold because the springs were so cold. And then when the larger pool would get to the point, and we didn't have anything except chlorine to put in it then. It didn't have all these wonderful chemicals and stuff like they have now. And so he'd let that pool drain out into the little creek and then fill up that pool from the pool that he'd already filled from the springs. And that meant it kept the larger pool kept full all the time that way. And they had a wonderful little snack bar. They had tennis courts, a miniature golf course, and there were just a great many things to do. And we spent every day out there.
I've got to ask this question. It may embarrass you a little bit, but just this week, the Miss America contest is coming back. It's on somewhere,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of controversy about. There always is about the women's attire.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm not getting into that, but I'm sure back in those days, when you had the opportunity to go to the swimming hole, the swimming pool,
Yeah.
the willow plunge, swimming attire was entirely different than it is today.
Heavens, yes. The first time I got a two-piece bathing suit, I thought I had just had the most wonderful thing in the world, because all of our swimming suits back then were one piece and longer than, certainly longer. Now people go down the street in clothes that were whole, that we wouldn't have thought going to the swimming
I don't
pool.
want to go too far on this conversation, but I understand what you're talking about. I have seen, I've been very blessed. Mother had a bunch of these old black and white photos. We sometimes has to work hard just to make them out. I mean, you'll see these photos and some of the sleds that you had during the winter times and the summertime. Life was just a lot slower and simpler, but it was a good time that you formed friendships and families did things together.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Ate together, worked together, certainly attended church together, raised your children together. In that era that you're in, I'm sure there are other people that watch this show and say, well, I wonder why she didn't mention me, but are there other people around that are still living in this area like yourself that have been born and raised? And I know that a lot of people will associate the Moody's. Most everyone knows the Moody's here in town and what a wonderful, fine family they are, but certainly not anymore. But they moved here.
Yeah, they did.
They moved here. How about another family or two that's actually born and raised here that's still around? Because I see them as they come into the complex. Most everyone knows your face. If they've got some gray hair in their head, they know you. Who are some of those other families that might be?
Let's see who I was with. Of course, one of my dear friends is Marie Jordan. Her family came from Bethesda, out in that area.
Which was a long way off.
It was. That was out in the country, really out in the country. And
well, now she's, what was her maiden name? Do you remember?
she was Marie Hardison.
Hardison, okay.
And her family lived up there on Lewisburg Avenue. Oh gosh, there's so many families there that some of the people that lived on my street, the Jeffersons and Jeff Bethure's great grandparents and the Greens and just I can't even think of all the different families that.
And your children, let's go back to them just a little bit because we just got about 4 minutes left in our presentation. We're about out of time. But your children attended schools here. Some of them went to BTA.
No.
No,
They
or went to
didn't.
Franklin.
When my children were grown, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia for about 14 years. My husband had worked down there, and we moved down there. And so my children finished their education in Atlanta all the way through high school. So they actually did not go to any of the
Public schools. But you came back.
Yeah, and some of my grandsons, of course, went to the schools here, and some of my great-grandchildren go to the public schools here. So we're still a family of of Williamson Countyans.
Well, you know, as you look at our community, we've had an opportunity to inventory different men and women in our community, so we can archive these, and look at those, look at the people, and talk about the times. Life, certainly as compared to today, was different. Women today, more women than not, certainly are outside. They're working outside the home.
Oh yeah.
Here you are still working several hours a day, and have continued to be productive. You're relatively very healthy. You've been wonderfully
I've been blessed. Yes.
You've got a wonderful family. You've been able to do about what you want to do or not do now in
Yeah.
life.
I'm very thankful that all of my children and grandchildren have been able to get work here, which probably had they been back in those days, they would have had to go elsewhere to get work.
Well, my point of bringing that up, oftentimes we hear, and I know it's very costly to run government and build schools and roads and things like that, but everyone that is one day younger than you have moved in here, and oftentimes that's very difficult for our existing residents oftentimes to accept. But I've seen you go around. Oh, certainly you want to hold your taxes down just like everyone else does. But you overall, you've accepted all of this new movement that's come and gone in Williamson County over the last certainly 25 to 30 years.
Well, I feel I'm sort of torn. In a way, I wish it were like it was back in my early days. But in another way, I feel like the newer people that have come in have brought a great deal to our county. They have, and certainly we have so many more conveniences than we had back then. So you have to kind of weigh one against the other. And I just don't worry about it.
Well, and you've learned to accept it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's changed. And it's the early days of ice skating on the Harpeth, which you have fond memories of, seeing your children grow up, come back here, go away to Atlanta. But it's just changed, and sometimes that's hard to accept. But at the same time, as you said, there's jobs here now for your grandchildren and your family to work. Connie Clark, we don't have enough time to always talk about everything, but we're out of time. Thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you for what you mean to Williamson County.
I'm delighted
your
to
family.
be here. I wish I could have shown you some more of these pictures of some of the things we did in the snow, because people that are living around here now don't remember much snow, and we had a great deal of snow back then.
We'll get those on for you. I'm Roger Sanders, and as we sign off, be with us next time. Again, thank you, Connie, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.